They said the night before the battle was the calmest anyone could remember. The stars hung low and bright over the valley, and the soldiers, young men with trembling hands and half-tied boots, sat by their campfires pretending not to be afraid. But among them moved a woman no one truly noticed. Her name was Elara Finch, and history would nearly forget her too, if not for what she did that night. She wasn't a soldier. Not really. She was a medic, one of the few allowed near the front lines. She was quiet, small, with dark eyes that saw everything and said nothing. To most, she was just Doc Finch, a soft voice in the storm of war. Yet beneath that calm face lived a secret, and that secret, hidden beneath layers of duty and sorrow, would change the course of the entire battle before dawn. The men were preparing for a fight they didn't believe they could win. Their enemy had more soldiers, better weapons, and the higher ground. Every scout report said the same thing. They would be crushed by sunrise. The commander, Colonel Mason, had already written letters to his family, sealed in a small tin box. Some of the younger men prayed. Others drank quietly, pretending not to. Only Elara kept moving, tending wounds, cleaning rifles, whispering small words that sounded like hope but felt like goodbye. No one knew she had been on the other side once. Years ago, before she changed her name, Elara Finch had been Elara Voss, a military strategist for the enemy forces. She had walked away after they burned her village for refusing to follow orders. She'd seen the cost of blind loyalty and chose exile instead. Now she worked in secret, healing men who would have once called her a traitor. That night, while the soldiers slept, Elara slipped away from camp. Her boots left no sound on the cold earth. The moonlight brushed her face as she crossed the valley toward the ruins of an old church, what was left of it after weeks of shelling. Inside, under the cracked roof and shattered altar, she found what she was looking for, a hidden transmitter buried beneath a stone slab. It wasn't supposed to exist anymore, but Elara had built it herself years ago. Her hands shook as she brushed the dust off the metal case. Static filled the air as she turned the dials, her breath visible in the cold. "Command outpost, come in," she whispered, her voice barely audible. After a long pause, a familiar voice answered, harsh, cold, and unmistakable. "This is command, identify." Her chest tightened. "It's me. Shadow 7. There was silence. Then a low laugh. Well, the ghost returns. "We thought you were dead." "I should be," she said. "But I have something better than ghosts. I have your plan." For the next few minutes, Elara spoke in code, giving away the coordinates of her former commander's new attack routes, the ones meant to crush the army she now served. Each word felt like a knife against her loyalty to the past. When she was done, she smashed the transmitter with a rock until it sparked and died. Then she buried it again and whispered, "That's the last secret I'll ever send." She turned to leave, but a shadow moved near the doorway. A man stepped into the pale moonlight, pointing a pistol straight at her. "You shouldn't be here, Finch," said a voice she recognized, Sergeant Cal Adler, one of Mason's most loyal men. Elara froze. "You followed me?" "I've been watching you," he said. "You sneak off every night. I thought maybe you were meeting someone. Didn't think I'd be right." "It's not what you think," she began, but he cut her off. "You're a spy." The word hit her like a bullet. She raised her hand slowly. "If I were, you'd all be dead by now." "Please, Cal, you have to trust me." "Trust you?" He laughed bitterly. "You just came back from the enemy's side. I saw the smoke from that church." "What were you signaling?" Elara's mind raced. She couldn't tell him the truth, not yet. If word got out that she'd spoken to the enemy, even to sabotage them, Mason would hang her before morning. She needed time. "You'll understand soon," she said softly. "But right now, if you care about your men, get back to camp and wake the colonel." "The attack's coming early." Cal hesitated. Something in her eyes, steady, unwavering, made him lower his weapon just an inch. "If you're lying." "I'm not," she said. "Go." He turned and ran into the darkness, leaving her alone in the ruined church. The silence returned, heavier than before. Elara sank to her knees, shaking. For years she'd lived between two worlds, never truly trusted by either. Tonight she'd just burned her last bridge. Back at camp, the alarm rang out before dawn. Scouts reported movement in the hills, more than expected. Colonel Mason gathered his officers around the map table, his jaw set tight. "They're early," he said. "Half our men are unready." Cal burst into the tent, breathless. "Sir, it's Finch. She knew. She warned me last night." Mason's eyes narrowed. She what? She said the attack would come early. She was right. The colonel didn't like mysteries. Where is she now? Before Cal could answer, Elara walked in, mud on her boots and blood on her sleeve. Right here, she said. And if you want to live through this, you'll listen. Every head turned. No one had ever heard her speak like that. She walked to the map and pointed to a ridgeline on the far side of the valley. They'll come from here first. It looks like high ground, but the soil's loose. One good hit from artillery, and it'll collapse on their tanks. Mason studied her, suspicious but curious. And how do you know that? I was one of them once, she said simply. And I built that ridge. The tent went silent. The colonel stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. All right, Doc, we'll take your word for it. Within the hour, the camp came alive with movement. Cannons were repositioned, mines planted, troops hidden in the mist. Every order Elara gave felt like a gamble, but Mason followed them. When the first shells screamed through the sky, they were ready. The ground shook. Smoke filled the air. The enemy tanks rolled forward, just as she had said. Then the ridge collapsed beneath them, burying half their force in a storm of fire and dirt. Cheers erupted across the valley, but Elara didn't smile. She knew it wasn't over. The enemy commander wouldn't stop. He would strike again, and harder. As the sun rose through the haze, Elara saw something through her binoculars that froze her heart. Beyond the smoke, at the edge of the forest, a second column of troops was moving, far larger than the first. She realized with a sick twist in her stomach that she'd been wrong about one thing. The ridge was a distraction. The real attack was coming straight for their medical tents, the one place with no defenses. Her blood ran cold. The wounded men, the supplies, the communications line. It would all be gone in minutes. She turned to run, shouting for Mason. But before she reached him, an explosion split the air. A shockwave threw her to the ground. When she looked up, the tents were burning, and somewhere in the fire, she heard the faint echo of a voice from her past, a voice she thought she'd silenced forever. Hello again. Shadow 7, it said through the static of a nearby radio. Did you really think you could betray me and live? Elara's breath caught. She knew that voice. It was Commander Rin Voss, her brother. For a moment, the world around her disappeared. The screams, the fire, the chaos, everything faded except that voice. Commander Rin Voss, her brother, the man she had once sworn to protect, then betrayed when she saw the monster he had become. The radio crackled again, his tone cold and familiar. You taught me everything I know about deception, Elara. But you forgot the first rule, never underestimate family. Her heart pounded in her chest. She stared at the smoking tents, her hands trembling. Rin, what have you done? She whispered. What I had to, his voice replied. You took my plans, my soldiers, my name. Now I'll take what you love most. The transmission cut off, leaving only static. Elara dropped the radio and ran toward the fire. The medical tents were half gone, the canvas curling into black ash. She could see bodies being pulled from the wreckage, men screaming for help. Her lungs burned as she tore through the smoke, searching for survivors. Colonel Mason was already there, barking orders through the haze. When he saw her, his face was streaked with soot and fury. You said we'd be safe here, he shouted. I was wrong, she gasped. They knew. He knew. Who? My brother, she said. He's leading them. Mason froze for half a heartbeat, processing the impossible. Your brother is the enemy commander? Yes, she said. And he won't stop until I'm dead. Before he could respond, another explosion shook the ground, closer this time. Mason grabbed her arm. We can't hold this position. If he's after you, we use that. Give him what he wants. Elara's eyes widened. You mean bait? Exactly, Mason said grimly. If he's obsessed with you, he'll make mistakes. And when he does, we strike. She hesitated. The thought of facing Rin again filled her with dread, but she nodded. Then let's end this. By dusk, the survivors regrouped in the ruins of the church where the story had begun. The air was thick with dust and gunpowder. The men moved quietly, setting traps and loading rifles. Elara stood alone at the altar, staring at the cracked cross above her. She could still hear her brother's voice in her head, calm and cruel. Never underestimate family. She thought about the last time they had spoken face to face. Years ago, before the war. He had been different then, brilliant, ambitious, but not yet broken. He believed their nation needed control, not compassion. She had believed in mercy. That difference had torn them apart. Now through the silence, she heard the low rumble of engines. Rin's army was approaching. The sound grew louder, closer, until it felt like thunder crawling over the earth. "Positions!" Mason shouted. The soldiers took cover behind the broken walls, rifles aimed at the dark horizon. Elara stood in the open, her figure outlined by the last light of day. Her breath came slow and steady. Somewhere out there, Rin was watching through binoculars, deciding whether to believe what he saw. A lone woman waiting in the ruins. The first bullet struck the dirt near her feet. Then another. She didn't move. The shot stopped, replaced by the grinding of tank treads. From the smoke, a figure appeared. A tall man in a black coat, his face hidden behind a mask of ash and steel. He walked toward her with the slow confidence of someone who believed he couldn't lose. "Elara," he said, lowering his weapon. "You always did like drama." She felt her throat tighten. "You killed innocent men, Rin. You burned villages." "For what?" "For order," he replied. "For peace. You think this world runs on mercy?" "No, sister. It runs on fear, and I learned that from you." She shook her head. "You learned nothing from me, didn't I?" he said softly. "I learned how to predict you. You came here to die, didn't you? Noble, tragic, perfect Elara." He raised his gun. "Say goodbye." Before he could fire, the ground beneath him exploded. Mason's men opened fire from both sides, and chaos erupted. Rin's soldiers returned fire, the night alive with flashes of light and thunder. Elara dove behind the altar as bullets shattered the stone around her. Mason shouted orders from the flank, his voice hoarse and desperate. The trap was working, at first, but Rin's forces were stronger, more organized. One by one, Mason's men began to fall back. The air filled with smoke and screams. Elara looked up through the chaos and saw her brother walking toward her again, unharmed, unstoppable. She crawled toward a fallen soldier and grabbed his sidearm. Her hands were slick with sweat and blood. When Rin reached the steps, she stood and aimed it at him. He smiled beneath his mask. "You won't shoot me." "Watch me," she said, and pulled the trigger. The shot hit him in the shoulder, knocking him back a step. For the first time, his calm shattered. He tore off his mask, revealing eyes so much like hers, tired, furious, human. "You think that will stop me?" he growled. "I don't need to stop you," she said quietly. "I just need to delay you." Then she pressed a detonator in her hand. The church walls erupted in a ring of fire. The blast threw both of them to the ground. When the dust settled, Rin was pinned under the collapsed roof, his weapon out of reach. Elara dragged herself to him, coughing, her ears ringing. He glared at her, blood running down his face. "You think you've won?" "No," she said softly. "I just think it's over." He laughed weakly. "You can't kill me." "You're too kind. Maybe once," she said. "Not anymore." She stood over him, gun trembling in her hand. The moment stretched forever, the firelight flickering across their faces, the air thick with smoke and ash. Then she lowered the gun. "I won't give you what you want," she said. "You don't get to make me like you." She turned to leave, but his hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. "You can't walk away from blood, Elara," he whispered. "It's who you are." She pulled free and looked down at him one last time. "No, it's who you were." Outside, the battle was ending. Rin's forces, leaderless, began to retreat. Mason's men cheered weakly, their victory more exhaustion than triumph. Elara stumbled out of the ruins, her uniform torn, her face streaked with soot. Mason met her halfway, limping from a wound on his leg. "You did it," he said. "No," she murmured, staring at the rising smoke. "We just survived." The next morning, the valley was quiet again. The war would go on somewhere else, fought by other names and faces. But in that small corner of the world, something had changed. The legend of the Silent Heroine began to spread. A woman who saved hundreds by defying both armies, who fought not for power but for peace. Elara never corrected them. She disappeared after the battle, leaving behind only a burned pendant with her initials engraved on it, E.F., buried in the ashes of the church. Some said she died. Others swore they saw her tending to the wounded in distant villages, still wearing that same calm smile. No one ever found Rin's body. Years later, soldiers still told the story by campfires on quiet nights. They spoke of a woman who stopped a war with courage, grief, and one impossible choice. And every time they told it, the story grew a little brighter, a little more like hope. Because sometimes the quietest voices echo the longest, and sometimes the hero no one sees is the one who changes everything.